Welcome to Spill the Tea. Today I'm talking to Chaz Williamson, a Christian romance author.
So welcome to Spill the Tea, and today I'm talking to Chaz Williamson, who is an author and writes Christian romance, which is an awesome thing, I think, especially as, we don't have as many males entering the romance sphere of writing. So what drew you to writing romance?
Well, I've always wanted to write. I started writing my first book at 8, got 2 paragraphs in, and that's too much. I played around with it over the years. I finished my first full-length draft of a novel back in 2001. I finished it in August of 2001. It was about terrorism. 9/11 came the following month, so I decided I wasn't going to write. Later on, I was losing my job, and I was on the road. The company was trying to get me with other positions, and I was spending all this time in hotel rooms, worrying about my future. And Janet, my wife, said, honey, you're sitting in these rooms and you're just wasting away your life fretting. So why don't you write me something? You love to write, so write me something. I said, I don't know what to write. She said, it will come to you. On Super Bowl Sunday 2013, I had to fly to Kentucky for work. I was so upset. I was missing the Super Bowl. I don't know who played it. It was just the fact of missing the Super Bowl. I fell asleep in the back of the airliner and had a dream, which became the first chapter of my first book. You write what you know about. And my wife and I have a story, fairy tale romance. So it's either I wrote about romance or I write about what I did for a living, hazardous waste. Now, I can make hazardous waste very interesting too, but I think romance is a much more funner category.
It definitely is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your first book and the inspiration behind it?
My first book, it came from that dream, and the dream it's kind of odd because it's two people arguing, and as the dream went on, I began to understand why. So I played around with writing this book for 3 years, and it grew to be 185,000 words. Then I am not self-published. I'm independently published, and when I finally hooked up with somebody I could trust, we began the editing process. After 7 months and reducing it down to 55,000 words, it felt like losing children, losing those 130,000 words. We came up with a product that we were happy with. I'm continuing to refine it. The first 4 books, my Seeking series, was the saga of the Jenkins family over 3 generations. And it was a contemporary romance. I'm not happy now that I know who I really am and developed who I am as an author with what I wrote. So I'm going back and I'm revising those to be a Christian romance series because my characters are Christian, but you really, really had to look, and I'm not proud of some of the language I used in those. From there, I felt the urge to write something else. And again, you write what you know about. We live in York County, which is the central part of Pennsylvania. Our next county over is Lancaster, which is where the Amish and the Mennonites are. And Janet and I love that area. We do date days there a couple times a month. And so I decided to write about that. At the end of my first series, the end of the last book in the series, Seeking the Pearl, 4 of my characters ended up moving to Lancaster County, where Sophie Miller opens a tea room. And I thought this is a perfect place to write about the lives and the loves. And I guess I published my first Paradise book in 2018. It has now grown to 14 books, 9 of which are novels and 4 of which are novellas. They are Christian romance. Some of my characters go through some very difficult situations. And as you and I talked about before, I love the characters I can bring in. Two of my heroes were Canadian hockey players, but that was cool.
That's very awesome. Shout out to the Canadians.
I felt inspired to write something different. So I went to the next area that I knew a lot about, which is the area above Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, which happens to be the apple orchard capital of the East. And I just love the people up there. So I created my South Mountain series. The difference between the Paradise series and the South Mountain series is we go a little bit deeper into the journey people take with God when they fall in love and how God influences the decisions they make. Not preachy, but I just really like how it is. And my readers are telling me these are my best books yet.
Oh, nice. So I have a book that you gave me to kind of have a look at called
Okay.
Promises, a woman's Christian
Yes.
second chance novel, the South Mountain Journeys of Faith book 2. Oh, he's got the cover right there. Awesome. I love it when people do that. Can you tell us a little bit about that book and the characters in it?
It's a second chance story of love. Emily's life didn't end up as she hoped. At 17, the world was full of promise. She planned on traveling the world, rescuing rodeo horses, and curing cancer. Now, 10 years later, she's stuck in the reality of being in the same hometown that she grew up in, trying as a single mom to raise a decent daughter. She lives in her parents' orchard, taking over for them. But the biggest regret she had was the man she loved who made her a promise never returned. Now, 10 years later, she looks up one day and sees him standing across from her. Of course, he has a daughter in the same age as her daughter. And while sparks fly, she begins to wonder, can I really trust a man who broke his promises to me? We find out later in the book why those promises were broken and that perhaps they were meant for each other. But there's a long journey with a lot of misunderstandings, as with any romance novel, lots of misunderstandings and false roads and yeah, dips and curves in the road. So, but I've had a lot of good feedback
Oh,
from
nice.
this one.
So all that lovely conflict before you get to your happily ever after, right?
That is correct. And my books always end happily ever after, yes.
And so what drew you to, I mean, I gotta say, I love your covers, like the colors, the way they pop and whatnot. Um, are those professionally made, or did you choose to have them done yourselves, or what were you doing there?
Well, our what we do is my wife will look through and she will decide, my wife Janet is she's manages the business. She'll look through and she'll come up with a number of potential covers. And then we talk about it and she makes the final decision. And then we get together with our publisher, which is Year of the Book, and they work with a design house to do this. And as you were talking about, this was Promises. The accompanying novella, Backroads, is done very well. We
Mhm.
have been going back and taking a look at some of the earlier covers as the whole field has changed, the whole romance field and the cover design has changed. Janet has been working with some design houses to redo some of the earlier covers. But no, we've between my wife and my publisher, I'm surrounded by very, very smart and very intelligent ladies. I have a lot of respect for women, as you'll see in the books.
So you work with a publisher, but you
Yes.
also said that you're independently published. How does that work?
Okay. The big difference is I don't have a contract with a Hallmark or somebody like that that's going to publish my books. By being independently published, what happens is I will create the book. Then once I have gone through it, and once my wife is the first reviewer, once we go through it, I send it to Demi, my publisher, and we go back and forth. She'll take a look and say, well, this needs to be changed. This needs to be changed. Then we'll go back and we work on the content first. After the content, we go back and then we do the editorial portion, making sure the verbs are conjugated right, making sure that, you know, how how we spelled tea room in the previous books is spelled the same way in
Mhm.
this book. So she's a great help that way. After the book is published and she helps us publish, of course, they're published on Amazon, the marketing all comes down to us. So we do all the marketing, we do all the Amazon ads, we do our book signings. We have a couple big venues that we go to. And plus we have our own online store. I put out a monthly newsletter which tells everybody exactly what we're doing. And actually one of the things we're doing right now is I'm serializing a new novella, which is going to be my reader magnet for the South Mountain series, and that's called Jubilee. So I'm in the 6th month of that, I believe. So that's kind of how that whole system works. But my books are very professionally done. I've gotten comments from readers. There's one lady she's become a big fan. We met her about 2 years ago. We met her at a book signing. She said the biggest problem I have with books these days is because of the mistakes in them.
Mm.
There's things spelled wrong, they're not formatted right. And she'll always comment about when she'll leave the reviews on Amazon about how well and professionally they're done. So that's the biggest thing that brings to it. Plus helping me become a better author over the years. When I look at my first efforts with Seeking Forever, the first book, up to where I'm at with Promises, I'm really proud of the development. And I know that I couldn't have gotten there without that coaching.
Mm-hmm. And it definitely is something that you gain over time, just doing the work, gaining that experience and learning what is needed in the industry and what fans love, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Absolutely.
And
So,
Promises, by the way, one of the things that we've learned is
Mhm.
about writing to market. So I did a lot of study with this one to see what I used to base myself off of, like Debbie McComber. She was the first romance author I kind of fell in love with her work. Now it's Karen Kingsbury. So that's kind of what I'm trying to emulate here. And she's the model that I used when I was looking to write to market with this book.
And with your I was going to say with your Paradise series, they probably do have the Karen Kingsbury feel as well, being that it's the Amish Lancaster type series.
Yes, they do but again, the biggest difference is we don't, even though there's some conversations that people have with God, they don't go as deeply into what I'm doing with the South Mountain series.
Mhm.
One of the As I was writing this book, and this is kind of a funny story, I'm a pantser. For those of you that that's a new word for, there's two writing styles. You can outline and say, okay, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen. Or the pantser is sit down, okay, my fingers are ready, what's going on today? In Promises, as I was writing it, of course, Emily's the heroine, she and Tyler, they broke up years ago. He went his own way, but she knows he's back in town, and this is bothering her. And he flies helicopters for a transport, medical transport. And she sees this helicopter fly over, and she pulls over to the side of the road. And I was kind of stuck with that. Then I started having this vision about this old ancient car with the license plate JRMH2911. Now I know a lot of Bible verses, but that one I didn't have recognized by the number. So I went and looked at it, and it talks about promises. God has plans for me. God has his promise that he has plans for me, plans to encourage me and fulfill me and not to harm me. And that just fits so well into that. So I wrote that into the scene, and it's actually in the very ending scene. She sees this ancient car again too. And some of my readers have said, who exactly was this person driving the car? Was it an angel or was it God himself? So I'm sorry, I digress. I can talk for hours. I apologize about that.
But it's probably fun having those conversations with your fans because obviously they're enjoying the book and it's making them think, right?
Yes. I get a lot of comments about I couldn't put it down. You made me miss my sleep last night.
That is a great backhanded compliment.
And I have one fan that says, every time you've got to stop writing, because every time you put a book out, to make sure I've got everything down, I go back and I reread all your books before I get to the new one. She said, it took me 3 days this time to go through them, but she must be really quick for you.
So how many books do you have out currently?
I have 21 that are published and available on Amazon in our store, and I have my free one, my reader magnet from from the second series, which was Skating in Paradise. That is a free book off my website, and people can go to my website, and it's just a banner up the top. It's absolutely free, and it's a great example of my writing style and what I did that for. And that was an idea both my wife and the publisher came up with together, was to put out this reader magnet. In one of my books, I introduced Molly. Molly was a 2-year-old orphan who was very, very sick. Skating in Paradise is the story of her hospital caregiver who comes to spend Christmas with Molly and her new family, never dreaming how her own journey of healing and life was about to change. So, but yes, I have there was 4 books in the first series, the Seeking series. There are 9 novels and 4 published novellas in the Paradise series, and I've got 2 novels and 2 novellas in the South Mountain series. I don't know if I'm going to be publishing any more this year. There may be 2 more coming. I'd like to release a novel and a novella at the same time. There may be 2 more coming out this year. And the reason I do that, for example, in in Promises, I like to take a character off of one of the books or a scene off of one of the books and then write the side story. The assistant coach that works with Emily is named Abby. Abby is very flirtatious. Of course, she remembers Tyler from high school and she tries to cause some issues. But the Backroads takes a look at from one of the scenes in here, and it's actually her sister Julia that the interaction between Abby and Julia and the man that Julia falls in love with. So I love putting those two together. My readers really like that. And one of the reasons that we started doing this is I had a lot of people telling me, I love your books, but they end too soon. No, they're designed for 50 to 55,000 words, which is what our genre market is.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, it ends too soon. So we decided to start putting out these novellas. They're like 10 to 12,000 words, and they keep people's interest. But I can write about some of the interesting sub characters that are in these. These characters become so real that they live with us. We will be someplace, and my wife will say, "Doesn't she act like Ellie does, or doesn't she remind you of how I picture Caitlin?" And we had this. Ellie is the only character that's in all 16 books. We meet her first as a pink-haired 16-year-old that does something really horrible to her aunt in the first book. Now she's kind of the matriarch of the entire series. But we were in Disney, and we were in the monorail loop. It was just Janet and I, and we were at the park. The doors open. This family pulls it in. It was 4 people. It was 2 kids, and this woman is exactly how I pictured Ellie. She's got the kind of darker skin. She's got the short black hair. She's got a dimple here, a dimple here. And the guy that was with her kind of reminded me of Henry, her husband, who had the reddish hair. He and the kids kind of pass out on the seat. And this lady looks at us and says, "Hi, how are you guys?" And we had the most in-depth conversation from the time it took to go from the park to the first hotel where we got out. And we got out, and Janet looks at me and she says, "Oh my goodness, we just met Ellie, didn't we?" I said, "Yes." I will also get people tell me that, I really hate this character. Why did you put her in there? Why did you make her like that? I just want it. Did you base her off a real person? Because if you did, I'd like to go meet her and slap her. I heard that one yesterday.
You're doing something right when you are evoking strong emotions.
Yes. Yes. I'd like to think so. I'd like to think that that's where it's going.
Oh, characters are fun. Do you find, as a pantser, when you're writing your characters, that sometimes they go in directions that you're not expecting?
Yes, that is true. In the first book in the Paradise series, Whispers, there are 3 brothers. The 2 brothers, Harry and Edmund, they have 2 characteristics in life, or two common characteristics. How much they hate each other and their taste in women, because they fall in love with the same girl not once but twice. And I was going to have, actually, as I started writing this, they were going to end up with they were both going to end up with who the opposite person that they married in the very end. But Edmund was a real scumbag, and he, at the end of the book, he finds redemption. And I really love writing in series because he comes back in book 9, and of course his wife is a very important character, and they're supporting characters, but he has turned in to be one of the most influential characters throughout the whole series. So it's different than I originally had him planned. And I based him off of some characters that we saw. We went to England, and I saw a number of characters, people that became characters in my books. The lady who has the tea room, Sophie, short, petite, she was Italian. She talks with a British accent. She's the one that opens the tea room. We actually met a travel agent who was the inspiration for that in our hotel in London. So it's really cool. And I've joked around with people in the past that said, "You better be nice or I'll write you into one of my novels and it won't be good."
I always say that with my cozy mysteries. You better watch out. I kill people in books. And then at the front, the disclaimer: this no, in fact, represents any real person. Hey,
Right.
we all kind of know
Well,
our
we know
books.
up here.
So with your series, I mean, obviously you have they're set in the same place. You have reoccurring characters. Are they standalone books, or do you really need to kind of read it from front to end?
Great question. They're all designed as standalone books, even the novellas. You can pick them up without reading any of the other ones and go through. I have a lot of people tell me that they don't like to do it that way. And that the lady who goes back and rereads everything, she
Mm-hmm.
says, because I don't want to miss, she said, because you've got a way of you've got something that this character might have done 4 books ago that has an impact on this one. But they all
Mm-hmm.
can be read standalone. I think they're better to read them the whole way through. But and I kind of had, especially the Paradise series, which is so long at 13 or 14 books, is they're kind of broken up into, almost like subs mini-series. The first 3 books are kind of the foundation I was using to kind of build it. The next 3 books, 4 books, dealt with the Lapp family, who is mainly a brother and sister who just they can't pause teasing each other, but they're main characters in those 3 books. Not the main characters in those, but they play supporting roles in the second and third book. And then my last one, I have a bunch of authors that come to the area. One comes up to research. She wrote spicy novels, and she had this big fight with her publisher, and she decided to change her genre.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to know what you're supposed to write about, so I'm gonna change. And she comes to Lancaster, and she's looking for characters, and she finds this one guy that there's something about him. He's hiding something, and she's got to know what it is. Well, she eventually falls in love with him at the end. And one of her friends comes to visit her, and she's a horror author that I only meant to have as a throwaway character. She ended up having a novella about her, and she's reoccurring in the books now. So it's like it's really cool. And as I stated, they are like family to us.
It's funny how you really do get to know your characters, and you have favorites, and
Mhm.
you get to they're kind of like extended family in a
They
way,
are.
especially when you're still knee deep in the series. So do you have a particular like writing time or writing routine, have to have stuff set up, or is it just wherever you would like?
I am most creative in the mornings. And this goes back to when I was working. I'm retired now, but I would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'd write for a couple hours before I went to work or logged in with, whatever. Then I also wrote at lunch when I was working. It's half an hour and 45 minutes that I took for lunch were like, those were busy. A large chunk of my books were done in those times. These days, since I'm retired, it's usually in the mornings, but if I feel inspired about something, I will sit down and any time of day. In The Lonely Road, which is his first novella in the Paradise series, because we had agreed we were going to have it. I finished the first book I'm sorry, I said the Paradise series, the South Mountain series. When I finished the first book in the series, Destiny, I was supposed to send the novella along, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do, because I was waiting for inspiration. It didn't come. And then it came, and that entire second novella was written in a 10 or 12 hour period. I got up, it was like 5 in the afternoon, which is not my normal writing time. And I worked on it till like 5 the next morning, and I
Wow.
came out with the finished product. And I was like, but I do wait for inspiration, and I typically don't have writer's block, but that was one time that I did. That was difficult.
Do you have anything that you use to try and get over a writer's block, or is that just because you don't experience it too often, you don't have a specific trick?
This is going to sound vain, but I look to my books for inspiration. I'm constantly in addition, I read multiple books at one time. Usually I'm reading something about World War II, and I'm reading Karen Kingsbury, and I'm reading one of my novels. And I find that my novels will sometimes inspire me because I'll pick up I'll get into my character's head, especially if it's one related to what I'm doing. And that's where I'm finding my inspiration, whether it just, knock something loose that's up there, but yeah, that's why I reread my books almost constantly.
I think that's a
Very annoying
great
to the
tip.
family.
I think that's a great tip. Do you have any other tips for aspiring writers?
Yes, write every day. And, even if you can't think of something, just sit there and look at it, even if it's going back over what you've done, and to keep plugging away. As I stated before I before I got published with the first book, I had written the 2 follow-up books that ended up being 3 eventually, but those books were like almost 600,000 words between the 3 books. As published, it was less than 200,000 words for all 4. But I kept writing and rewriting, just get that creative juice flowing, because it helps you in many ways, not only to be creative, but to continue to work on your craft. And you can become your own inspiration by doing that. I find that the biggest inspirations in life often come from those around you and what's within you. I'm one of my favorite preachers often says, you have two movies that you can play every morning. You can play the one about all the bad things that happen in your life, or you can play about the good things. And writing is the same way. You can be, oh, I got my 17th rejection letter on this one. I'm no good. I'm a horrible author. Or you can say, oh, I just got my 17th rejection letter. You know what? That's 17 publishers that I'm not going to work with, but I am going to find the next one, and let me go back and improve on that. And so that's oftentimes when I'm feeling down, or I'm feeling I'm not doing something, that's the story I will tell myself. I'll put in my head that I need to be positive, and these are the positive things I'm going to focus on, which you'll see this if you read any of my books. That's what my characters do too. So I guess they're a reflection of me.
So your books, are they exclusive to Amazon? Are they in like Kindle Unlimited program, or are they?
Yeah, they are they're not wide.
Okay.
The paperbacks are on Amazon. Most of the Paradise series, the novels in the Paradise series and the South Mountain series, are available in large print. We have, of course, the ebooks for all of those. And if you're in Amazon, if you're in Kindle Unlimited, my books are free, with the exception of the free book, The Skating in Paradise. And if you're wondering where that fits in, that's like book 3A in the Paradise series.
And they can find that on your website, right?
They can find that on my website, yes, at www.chazwilliamson.com, which I'm sure you're going to have on the podcast. But yes, so they're offering. I really enjoy when, as a writer, I know I'll never get rich at this, but hopefully I'll be able to influence people's lives. I had one right after we put out the first series, and we were talking about what to do next. And this one lady came to us. I won't go into her whole story, but she and her husband were looking for inspiration, and they found it. When she came back the next year at the book, because we do an annual book signing at this place. And when she came back the next year, and she told us how that had affected their lives together and their romance and helped heal them, that was, what more can you ask for as an author, to know that you've helped somebody. Your words have helped somebody, inspired somebody. So that's the greatest part of it.
That's definitely awesome. So I'm going to put the link to your website and to your book Promises in the description.
I appreciate that.
So
Thank
people
you.
can find you, check it out, maybe sign up for the newsletter, get that free book. Hopefully, some people will enjoy your wonderful interview that you had here, and maybe they'll be inspired by your books.
I appreciate you taking the time to do the interview. When I heard it was Spill the Tea, first thing I thought was that tea room. It's like, it was really, really cool. Some things are just destined to be. So maybe this is one of those.
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And for my fans out there, thank you for following me. I hope that the words that I write impact your life in a positive way and make a good influence for you.